In the early 14th century, Norway found itself in a critical situation. After centuries as a central power in Northern Europe, the country was gradually weakening. Political unrest, the loss of territories, and pressure from powerful neighbours like Sweden and Denmark forced Norway to fight for its independence. The characters who shaped this period, powerful noblemen, young kings, and ambitious rivals, set off a process that transformed Norway from a great power to a diminished player in the Nordic region. For a long time, Norway controlled important islands in the North Atlantic, including the Hebrides and the islands in the Isle of Man. These islands were not only strategically important for controlling the sea routes between Norway, Scotland, and Ireland, but they also symbolised Norway's power over the North Atlantic. Under King Håkon Håkonsson in the 13th century, Norway had secured its dominance over these territories, and the kingdom stretched over large parts of the North Atlantic. However, in the year 1266, after years of conflict with Scotland, Håkon's successor, King Magnus Lagaböte, made an agreement with the Scottish king. In exchange for a large sum of money, Norway ceded both the Hebrides and the Isle of Man to Scotland. This marked a significant blow to Norway's international influence, as these islands had been central to Norway's strategic control of the seas. The loss of the Hebrides and the Isle of Man signalled the beginning of a gradual weakening of Norway's position in Northern Europe. After Magnus Lagaböte's death and the loss of important territories, Håkon V, who reigned from 1299 to 1319, became the last Norwegian king who truly tried to maintain Norway's power in the Nordic region. He strengthened the Norwegian kingdom by building fortresses such as Akershus in Oslo and Bauhus Fortress near today's border between Norway and Sweden. These fortresses were meant to secure Norway's defence against external enemies, especially from Sweden, which was beginning to expand. But despite Håkon V's efforts to build military defences, he was unable to recover Norway's territorial losses. His reign was marked by a gradual decline in power, both in relation to neighbouring kings and to the Norwegian nobility, which began to gain more political influence through the Norwegian Council of the Realm. At the same time that Norway struggled to maintain its position, Sweden's ambitions were growing. Duke Erik of Sweden, brother of the infamous King Birger, was one of the most ambitious figures of this period. He dreamed of creating a middle Nordic kingdom that would include parts of both Norway and Sweden. Erik was a ruthless strategist. He was embroiled in a conflict with his own brother, King Birger, in the infamous power struggle known as the Nyköping Banquet. Erik and his other brother, Valdemar, imprisoned Birger, who later took revenge by letting them starve to death in captivity. This event plunged Sweden into chaos, giving Norwegian noblemen an opportunity to strengthen Norway's position, but it ultimately led to a union between Norway and Sweden, which only increased tensions between the two nations. After Håkon V's death in 1319, his 3-year-old grandson, Magnus Eriksson, became king of both Norway and Sweden. This personal union was meant to strengthen both countries against external threats, but in reality, it led to increased political instability. The young Magnus was heavily influenced by Swedish advisors, and many Norwegian noblemen, led by Erling Vidkunsson, feared that Sweden would dominate the union and undermine Norway's independence. Magnus's reign was marked by conflicts between the two kingdoms. While Sweden had a larger population and more military power, the Norwegian noblemen felt that Norway was being neglected. This led to a fierce struggle for Norway's political structure, with noblemen like Erling Vidkunsson fighting hard to preserve it. Vidkunsson was a powerful leader who tried to balance the demands of the noblemen with the authority of the king, but the union with Sweden made it increasingly difficult for Norway to control its own destiny. Erling Vidkunssons, one of Norway's wealthiest and most influential noblemen, played a key role in governing the country on behalf of the weak King Magnus. Erling served as Norway's regent and held much of the real power in the kingdom. He was loyal to Norway, but he also knew that he had to balance the growing Swedish influence represented by Magnus Eriksson. Under Erling's leadership, the Norwegian Council of the Realm became the most important political institution in Norway. It was here that Norwegian noblemen could meet to ensure that Norway's interests were protected, especially against Swedish dominance. But even Erling, with all his power and influence, could not stop Sweden from gaining control over Norway. By the middle of the 14th century, Norway was on the verge of collapse. The once mighty kingdom had lost territories like the Isle of Man and the Hebrides, and was now caught between two powerful neighbours, Sweden and Denmark. The internal power struggle between the monarchy and the nobility, combined with external pressure, led to Norway gradually losing its political independence. The young King Magnus Eriksson never managed to effectively unite the two kingdoms, and noblemen like Erling Vidkunsson fought a desperate battle to preserve Norway's independence. But with both Swedish and Danish forces pressing in from all sides, Norway was slowly but surely drawn into a process that would eventually lead to the loss of its independence. As the kingdom weakened further, another storm was brewing, one that no political manoeuvring could stop. Just as Norway faced its greatest internal and external challenges, a new and deadly force was about to sweep across Europe. A force that would decimate entire populations and bring kingdoms to their knees. Little did Norway know, its greatest trial was yet to come.